To Unite a Realm, Chapter 1. The blood in my veins froze at the glint of steel Chief Bear Grey angled against Trista's throat. I stood in front of the crowd at the East Tower, watching the horror unfold in the middle of the courtyard. At my side, my sister Lainey tucked her shaking arms against her ribs. Vera, Lainey whispered my name like a plea, but I could do nothing to save Trista from the Greys. The tyrants had killed my friends before. It was an accident. My father, the chamberlain of our small conquered country of Campbell, stood before Bear Grey. Father's expression was grim. The irises of his eyes blew pinholes in a sea of white. A 3-foot-tall Yun perched on Father's shoulders, the bird's deadly claws dangerously close to his throat. The Greys cultivated the horrid birds in secret. They took our precious innovations but didn't share their treasures. Standing behind Trista, Bear's son Angus held a pistol at the ready, its muzzle pointed at the ground. His eyes were the color of frosted sky, and his angled jaw was set in hard lines. Despite the acidic hatred burning in my lungs, I knew before I could rest I would have to draw his beautiful, murderous face in aching detail. Bear's blade stayed perilously close to Trista's windpipe, but he rotated his shoulders to look at my father, who stood a few feet to his right. When was the last time you had an accident at one of your labs? His growling voice rumbled across the crowded courtyard. Father paled. His shoulders curled in against the threatening bird and the chief's accusations. When was the last time you lost an entire batch of red velvet vaccine? Bear spoke with an uncivilized accent of Alta-Glen, all slurred words and round edges. Dark hair covered the back of his hand, holding the knife at Trista's throat. My vision blinked in and out as dread roared through me. They were never supposed to have found out Trista destroyed the precious red velvet vaccine they'd come to steal. How had it gone so terribly wrong? I turned to Lainey, but she only had eyes for the cruel chief. She worked in the red velvet labs. She wouldn't have answers. She wasn't a rebel. Lainey would rather marry Angus than kill him. Unfortunately, even with all our safeguards, Father answered, mistakes are made. Aye, Bear said, they are. His words were stones around my neck, condemning us. We were going to die, join the long list of people destroyed by the Greys. Trista yelped as Bear reached out with his left hand and grabbed her arm. You were the last person in the lab last night. Bear's nose buckled in the middle and bent slightly right. He'd broken it 2 years ago, fighting Ian Wallace, and he'd never had it set properly, a warning to would-be rebels. She nodded miserably. I'm sure the refrigeration was on and working properly when I left. Then what happened? She looked like a toy doll in Bear's ferocious clamp. Her lip quivered. Fear turned my body to ice. Any number of things could have kept power to the lab, Father said. With the influx of people using electricity in the West Tower, he sent a meaningful glance around the courtyard of the Camardi Institute, especially at the 50 armed men and women from Alta-Glen who'd accompanied Bear and Angus on this annual visit to Campbell. Saddled horses twitched and stomped on the manure-smeared cobblestones. The Greys didn't usually bring an army. I should have discouraged Trista, but we'd agreed the rulers didn't deserve the difficult-to-make vaccine. This batch was promised to the people of Hogg, the marshy domain to the east. They'd suffered a serious outbreak. Children were dying by the dozen. Bear's eyes widened. You're blaming us? Father shrugged, the bird on his shoulders ruffling. Those creatures sensed far too much. It explains the timing. The circuit breakers could have easily tripped and shut down. The cooling machine for the serum must be manually reset when the electricity surges or disrupts. It happens all the time. I bit my lip, hope a desperate swelling in my heart. Father had delivered that line perfectly. My eyes flickered over Bear's face. Believe him. Believe it was an accident. Bear's knuckles went white as he tightened his grip on Trista's bicep. Is he telling the truth? To my horror, she hesitated. Her gaze flashed to Father. Yes? Bear's eyes narrowed. York. With a rustle of feathers, a silver-winged Yun perched on a woman's forearm spread its wings. I flinched. The wingspan, longer than a man was tall, spread a shadow like ragged teeth over the ground. It flapped slowly and landed next to Trista. My pulse tripled. The birds could detect lies. Bear released her arm and lowered the blade from her throat. Kneel. She whimpered as she obeyed. It hurt to watch, but I couldn't look away. I didn't blink. Hold out your arms, palms up on the ground, Bear ordered. Tris displayed her limbs over the cobblestones. Tears streaked her face. She looked to Father, but his face was impassive. What could he do? What could any of us do? I chewed on the inside of my cheek as I failed at finding a way out of this. The Yoon's curved talons clamped her wrists. Tell me what happened to our vaccines, Bear said. Look at Yoon when you answer. Trista's body shook, but her words came out stiff as if reciting them. The vaccine should be kept at 40 degrees at all times. If it gets above 50, the serum will spoil and the vaccines are no longer effective. Last night, the refrigeration failed. This morning, the doses had reached 61 degrees. The bird watched her in silence. Has this happened before? Bear asked. Yes, Trista said. Lie. The bird's voice was fingernails on slate, a shock every time an Yoon spoke. Chilling prickles skittered down my spine, my nerves at the raspy accusation. Bear's jaw worked. What happened with the refrigeration? I don't know, Trista said. Lie, York said. I gnawed my knuckles, willing the bird to be quiet. Bear crunched at her side, the leather of his boots creaking. His knife slid forward, resting against her throat again. Did you turn off the refrigeration? She shook her head, but stopped when her skin split against the blade. Her eyes popped wide and rolled down, trying to see the weapon. I took an involuntary step forward, but Lainey clamped her hand on my arm, stopping me. Answer the question. Bear's voice was low and chilling. Yes. Tears built behind my eyes. No. Why? Bear asked. Her eyes flashed with defiance. Those vaccines should have gone to Haag, to the outbreak centers. You don't deserve our protection. That's treason. His pronouncement landed like boulders. She spit in his face. My entire body lit on fire. The glistening glob slicked down Bear's cheekbone and into his beard. Any last words? His voice was too calm. No! The cry tore from my chest. Father's warning gaze cut to me as Lainey's hand clamped over my mouth, smothering my scream. Bear ignored me, but Angus's stunning gray eyes, shimmering with anger, settled on me. Searing white flame burned up my belly. I latched onto Lainey's forearm, my nails digging into her sweater as I pressed her palm tighter against my lips. This is only the beginning. Trista's eyes had turned to coal chips. She lifted her chin. No. Bear's shoulders drooped. This is the end. It happened so fast. One heartbeat, Trista was kneeling, proud and vibrant. The next, red poured down her neck, her face ashen and gasping. Wet gurgles bubbled up her broken throat. Bear lay her on the ground, and his murderous hand turned almost gentle as he rested it on her hair. His face was dark, his eyes hooded as he watched her until she no longer moved, her life dripping off the blade at his side. My legs turned to wet noodles. Though Trista lay there, I kept seeing Amelia, another friend, killed. Terror sliced through my body. It could have been me. Lainey's fingers on my face went limp and fell. I sucked in a ragged wheeze. A woman in the crowd screamed. The pack of Glens took a step closer to their chief. Angus's jaw was tight and his expression unreadable as he stared at my friend's fallen form. Monster. I gripped my teeth to stop myself from yelling, the string of vile curses building on my tongue. The punishment for treason is death. Bear's voice was eerily calm as his gaze raked over the stone-faced Campbells. You do not help yourselves by destroying the strength and integrity of our united realm. Divided, we cannot stand. Bear turned his burning gaze on my father's blank stare. How quickly can you have another batch of vaccines ready? I haven't had a chance to assess the state of the serums, but I expect it will be months. Bear's nostrils flared and his mustache quivered. Make it weeks. Father lifted his hands up, palms open. We will do our best, but science is not an unruly child to be pummeled into submission. By the uptick of Bear's brow, it seemed the chief understood Father's words were an insult to their crude ways. Bear whistled, and the Yoon on Father's shoulder launched into the air so roughly it left a dripping red line on Father's collar. Put your house in order. I don't want to return here after the gathering to do it for you. Bear paused, and I heard his final unspoken threat in my heart. After I've killed you too. Father swallowed and bowed. That won't be necessary. He wrapped a thin hand around his neck, as if imagining it severed from his body. His fingers came away bloody. Barry's gaze locked on me like a predator finding prey. My tongue turned to sand. Good. Terrors of all creeping demons, he smiled at me. We'll look forward to Lainey and Vera joining us at the gathering. He turned to my father. May it not be your last. His threat hung in the air like poisoned fog. Why must I go to the gathering? Lainey was going to become Chamberlain of Campbell after my father. She should be the only one that they required at the gathering. Angus watched me, a crease between his brows. At 24, he stood a palm taller than his father and had the same thick brown hair, although his was cropped short about his ears. I forced my expression into an emotionless mask, but my stomach twisted into painful knots. Traitors were killed at the gathering. I hope you decide to read more.